Because it's the third time we've ever seen an interstellar object. And interstellar doesn't just mean Matthew McConaughey. It means something not from our solar system. It's interstellar. It's between suns. And so this thing came from like beyond our solar system and is just passing through. It's only the third time we've ever seen something like that.
Is that why it's called 3I?
Yeah, because it's 3I, not 1I or 2I. It's 3I. That's exactly right. So it's exciting for that reason alone. And if it turns out to be a spacecraft, sure, I'll buy them lunch.
NASA has just released a shocking image. A discovery they never planned for us to see. An object drifting near Jupiter, behaving unlike any comet we've ever known. No tail, no water, just a massive red cloud of gas expanding in space like a warning. And the question that haunts us, if it's not a comet, then what is it? This discovery could shatter everything we thought we knew about the cosmos, revealing a mystery that could change our understanding of the universe forever. Are we looking at a cosmic anomaly or something far more sinister?
A mystery interstellar object that was spotted by astronomers last week. It could be the oldest comet ever seen. It's only the third time that we've actually detected an object that has come from beyond our solar system.
This mysterious object, now named 3I/Atlas, was detected by NASA's infrared telescope SPEAR-X in August 2025. This mission, launched with the aim of mapping the universe in wavelengths invisible to the human eye, was designed to explore a wide range of cosmic phenomena, from the birth of stars to the chemical composition of distant galaxies. But in the middle of this sweeping survey, SPEAR-X detected something far closer than anyone had anticipated, and far stranger than anyone could have imagined. Located 2.2 astronomical units from the Sun, roughly the orbit of Jupiter, this object appeared faint and small, silently drifting through space. It was cataloged as 3I/Atlas, the third interstellar object ever discovered by humanity. Prior to this discovery, we had only encountered two such objects, Oumuamua in 2017 and Borisov in 2019. These earlier discoveries had already astonished scientists, proving for the first time that interstellar visitors regularly pass through our solar system. Now 3I/Atlas have joined their ranks. Initially, astronomers expected the object to behave in a way similar to Borisov, which had been classified as a typical comet. Comets, as we know, are icy bodies that orbit the Sun, and their behavior is relatively predictable. As a comet gets closer to the Sun, its icy surface heats up, and water ice sublimates directly into vapor. This causes a glowing tail of gas and dust to form, streaming behind it like a cosmic signature, painting the dark void of space with light. This is the script that comets have followed for centuries, and scientists thought 3I/Atlas would simply be another chapter in that long-standing narrative. However, from the very first observations, it was clear that 3I/Atlas was breaking the mold. Instead of the familiar water-rich coma that typically surrounds comets, SPEAR-X detected something completely different. The object was venting carbon dioxide, an unusual and unexpected gas for a comet at this distance from the Sun. There was no visible tail of water vapor, no trail of dust or gas, just a smooth, expanding shell of CO2 surrounding the object. This was completely out of character for a comet, especially one located at a distance of 2.2 astronomical units, where water typically dominates cometary activity. To put this into perspective, comets at this distance almost always exhibit a dominance of water vapor, with carbon dioxide being present in only small amounts. Water vapor is what drives the classic cometary tail that we've all seen in images and scientific studies. It's the gas that sublimates from the comet's surface, creating the stunning visual phenomenon we associate with these objects. But in the case of 3I/Atlas, the situation was reversed. Water was nearly silent and carbon dioxide was the only voice. And not just a little CO2, 3I/Atlas was releasing it in enormous quantities, far beyond what anyone had seen before at this distance from the Sun. This revelation transformed Atlas from a minor discovery into one of the most perplexing mysteries NASA had ever recorded. The absence of water and the dominance of carbon dioxide made it clear that this object wasn't behaving like any comet we had studied before. It wasn't just a typical interstellar visitor, it was something altogether stranger. And this marked the beginning of a journey into the unknown, a journey where scientists were forced to rethink their understanding of comets, their behavior, and the very nature of interstellar objects. The discovery of 3I/Atlas also raised questions about the object's composition and the unusual behavior of its coma. A coma is the cloud of gas and dust that surrounds a comet's nucleus as it approaches the Sun. This halo of material is typically chaotic, as gas and dust jets violently stream away from the comet due to the heat of the sun. But the coma surrounding Atlas didn't behave this way. Instead of the usual turbulent jets and uneven expansion, Atlas's coma was smooth, uniform, and almost perfectly spherical. This was another anomaly that didn't fit with our understanding of cometary behavior. Astronomers initially assumed that this unusual structure was just an exaggerated version of normal comet behavior, but when they analyzed the data further, they found that the coma was made almost entirely of carbon dioxide. This alone was astonishing. At 2.2 astronomical units from the Sun, comets should be dominated by water sublimation, but Atlas was releasing carbon dioxide at an unprecedented rate. In fact, it was venting CO2 at an astounding 70 kilograms every second, an amount far greater than what we would expect from a comet of this size and at this distance. This discovery prompted a range of theories about what could be happening with Atlas. One possibility was that the carbon dioxide was escaping first because it is more volatile than water. As the CO2 vented from the surface, it could be acting like a thermal blanket, cooling the surface of the comet and preventing any water ice beneath from reaching the necessary temperature to sublimate. Another theory suggested that the water ice might be trapped beneath layers of dust and frozen compounds, hidden from the sun's heat and unable to sublimate. However, both of these theories seemed to fall short when scientists looked at the coma structure itself. The smooth, uniform nature of the coma didn't align with what we would expect from such processes. For astronomers, this presented a mystery that went far beyond the simple behavior of a comet. It raised the possibility that Atlas was not just an outlier among comets, but something that might challenge everything we knew about these objects. There was no simple explanation that could account for the data, and with each new observation, the mystery deepened. What was Atlas really? Was it just an exceptionally rare type of comet? Or was it something entirely different? And if it was something different, what could that mean for our understanding of interstellar objects and their behavior? This is where part of the excitement and the uncertainty began. With each new piece of data, Atlas was revealing itself to be far more complex than anyone had anticipated. Scientists were forced to consider new possibilities, and as they dug deeper into the mystery of Atlas, they couldn't help but ask, what exactly is this object? And how does it fit into the broader picture of our solar system and the universe beyond? The answers would not come easily, but the quest for understanding had only just begun. This marked the start of one of the most intriguing and puzzling discoveries in modern astronomy. The object known as 3I/Atlas was no longer just an interstellar visitor. It had become an enigma, one that would challenge scientists to rethink their assumptions and explore the unknown. And while it was clear that this was no ordinary comet, the question remained, what, then, was it? The answer to that question might just change everything we thought we knew about the universe. When astronomers first began observing 3I/Atlas, they expected it to follow the same predictable behavior as previous comets. Comets typically follow a familiar script as they approach the sun. As they get closer, their icy surfaces begin to warm and the water ice sublimates directly into vapor. This creates a glowing tail of gas and dust that trails behind the object, a spectacular and predictable display of cosmic activity. But from the very beginning, Atlas refused to fit into this well-established narrative. Instead of the usual water-rich coma, which is the characteristic feature of most comets, Atlas was emitting an unusual substance, carbon dioxide. And it wasn't just a small amount. Atlas was venting this gas in enormous quantities, unlike anything seen before at this distance from the sun. Normally, carbon dioxide is present in only small amounts in comets, usually overshadowed by the far greater production of water vapor. However, in the case of Atlas, the balance was completely reversed. Water was barely detectable and carbon dioxide dominated the object's activity. This stark difference was enough to raise eyebrows in the scientific community, and it marked the beginning of a mystery that would only deepen as observations continued. At a distance of 2.2 astronomical units from the Sun, which is roughly the orbit of Jupiter, comets usually exhibit strong signs of water sublimation. Water vapor is released in large quantities as the comet gets closer to the Sun, forming the characteristic tail of gas and dust that we associate with these objects. But Atlas showed no such tail. Instead, SPHEREX, the infrared telescope that discovered Atlas, detected only a smooth, expanding shell of carbon dioxide. This was a startling departure from the expected behavior, and the implications were profound. The comets in our solar system typically have a well-understood pattern of behavior. As they move closer to the sun, the heat causes their icy surfaces to sublimate. Water vapor bursts forth, and this process is usually accompanied by the formation of a glowing tail that stretches across the sky. Carbon dioxide is usually present, but it is much less abundant than water, and it does not play the leading role in the behavior of the comet. But Atlas didn't behave this way. Instead, it was venting large amounts of carbon dioxide while the water vapor was conspicuously absent. This unusual behavior immediately raised questions about the composition of Atlas. What was causing this imbalance between carbon dioxide and water? One theory suggested that carbon dioxide was more volatile than water and therefore sublimated first. This could create a thermal blanket over the surface of the object, preventing the underlying water ice from reaching the necessary temperature to sublimate. In this scenario, the carbon dioxide would be escaping first, acting as a kind of shield that kept the water ice beneath it from releasing any gas. Another theory proposed that the water ice was hidden deeper beneath the surface, trapped under layers of dust and frozen compounds. In this case, sunlight might not be able to penetrate deep enough to cause the water to sublimate, leaving it locked away beneath the surface. However, neither of these theories fully explained the strange behavior of Atlas. The coma surrounding the object was nearly perfectly symmetrical, an extraordinary characteristic that doesn't fit the usual chaotic, irregular behavior of most comets. Normally, comets release gas and dust in bursts, with jets of vapor shooting out from cracks in the surface. This process is messy and irregular, with the coma expanding unevenly as the object moves through space. But Atlas's coma was different. It was smooth, uniform, and nearly spherical, creating a halo around the object that looked almost unnatural in its symmetry. This uniformity was unlike anything seen in the comas of typical comets, where the gas and dust are ejected chaotically into space. This perfect symmetry of the coma raised more questions. If this was a natural process, why was the object's behavior so organized and controlled? The smoothness of the coma suggested that something was maintaining it, rather than it being formed by the usual chaotic outgassing of a comet. This symmetry didn't fit the profile of a natural comet. It looked more like something that had been deliberately shaped or controlled. For astronomers, this was a deeply unsettling discovery, as it suggested that Atlas might not be following the rules that we've come to expect from comets. As the data came in, astronomers compared Atlas to other known comets, particularly those from the Kuiper Belt and the distant Oort cloud. These are the icy bodies that orbit the sun far beyond the planets, and while they sometimes release more carbon dioxide than water, even these comets don't exhibit the kind of symmetrical coma seen around Atlas. Even the most active comets in the outer solar system do not produce a coma this large, this uniform, or this consistent. And that is what made Atlas so puzzling. It didn't just look unusual, it looked alien. It behaved in ways that didn't align with the natural processes that we have studied for centuries. To further complicate matters, Atlas was venting carbon dioxide at an unprecedented rate. It was releasing around 70 kilograms of CO2 every second, a staggering amount for an object at this distance from the sun. To put that into perspective, that's the equivalent of the mass of a human body being ejected into space every single second. This constant, steady stream of gas raised more questions about the nature of Atlas. Why was it venting CO2 so efficiently? What was driving this process, and why was it so different from the outgassing of water vapor that we normally see in comets? The more astronomers studied Atlas, the more its behavior seemed to defy conventional explanations. The comet's coma wasn't just different, it was eerily calm. There were no chaotic eruptions, no bursts of mixed gases, and no signs of the usual water jets that we expect from comets as they approach the sun. Instead, Atlas released carbon dioxide with a mechanical consistency, almost as if the object itself was regulating the flow of gas. This level of control was unsettling because it didn't match the violent, unpredictable nature of most comets. One possible explanation for the absence of water vapor was that the carbon dioxide was cooling the surface of the object, acting as a natural refrigerator that prevented the water ice from sublimating. The CO2 could form a thin layer of frost on the surface of Atlas, insulating the water beneath and preventing it from reaching the temperature needed to turn into gas. Another theory suggested that the water ice was trapped beneath layers of dust and frozen carbon compounds, preventing sunlight from reaching it and causing it to remain dormant. But again, neither of these explanations fully accounted for the strange behavior of the coma. Especially its symmetry and the uniformity of the carbon dioxide venting. The fact that Atlas was venting carbon dioxide in such large quantities while simultaneously showing no signs of water activity left astronomers with a profound mystery. It wasn't just that the object was behaving differently from other comets. It was that the very laws that governed cometary behavior seemed to be broken. Atlas was forcing scientists to reconsider everything they knew about the nature of comets and their behavior. And as the object continued to drift through space, scientists were left with more questions than answers. What exactly was happening to Atlas? Why was it behaving so differently from anything else we had ever observed? And what did this mean for our understanding of the solar system and the objects that inhabit it? As astronomers continued to study Atlas, the object remained a source of intrigue and confusion. Its strange, smooth coma, its massive carbon dioxide output, and the eerie silence of its water vapor all pointed to an object that didn't follow the natural rules. Whether it was a comet that had evolved in a completely different environment or something far more mysterious remained to be seen. But one thing was clear: Atlas wasn't just another comet. It was something entirely new, something that would continue to challenge our understanding of the cosmos. As astronomers continued their analysis of 3 Atlas, their focus began to shift from its strange coma to the core, or nucleus, of the object. The nucleus is the solid body at the heart of a comet, and it is typically composed of a mixture of rock, dust, and ice. In the case of Atlas, the initial observations from the Hubble Space Telescope indicated that the nucleus was much smaller than expected. The estimates put it somewhere between 300 and 500 meters across, which was relatively small compared to other known interstellar objects like Borisov. This size was consistent with what astronomers would expect for an icy fragment drifting through space, a typical characteristic of comets that wander into our solar system. However, when SphereX began collecting infrared data from Atlas, the readings didn't align with the initial assumptions. Instead of observing a faint, unremarkable body, the telescope detected an intense flux of reflected light at the 1-micron wavelength. This signal was much stronger than what would be expected from an object of Atlas's purported size. The intensity of the reflected light was so abnormal that the models had to be run multiple times to account for it. Every time the calculations were made, they pointed to the same shocking conclusion. The nucleus of Atlas might not be 300 meters across, but instead could be closer to 46 kilometers in diameter. This discovery stunned the scientific community, as a nucleus of that size would make Atlas larger than 90% of the comets ever recorded. To put this into perspective, it would be over 1 million times more massive than Borisov, the previous interstellar comet. The implications of such a massive nucleus were profound. If Atlas's nucleus were truly that large, its gravitational influence alone should have been detectable. It should have caused a measurable bending of light as it drifted through space, an effect known as gravitational lensing. Additionally, the coma surrounding the object should have been bright enough to be detected long before SphereX came online. Yet, none of these things happened. For months, Atlas remained invisible to our instruments, hidden from view, until it was finally detected by SphereX. The discovery of Atlas's potentially massive nucleus prompted a second theory. Perhaps the light detected by SphereX wasn't actually coming from the nucleus itself, but from tiny particles suspended in the coma. These particles could reflect sunlight in such a way that it would exaggerate the size of the nucleus. This seemed like a reasonable fix, as it accounted for the unexpectedly high levels of reflected light without requiring Atlas to have such a massive nucleus. However, this theory also ran into complications. When astronomers studied the pattern of the reflected light, they found something unexpected. Instead of the jagged, uneven profile that is typically associated with the scattering of light by dust particles, the reflectivity curve for Atlas appeared smooth. It was too smooth, almost perfectly symmetrical, which was highly unusual. This kind of reflectivity doesn't match the chaotic nature of particles scattering sunlight in random directions. It suggested that something more uniform, more controlled, was responsible for the light reflection. The smoothness of the reflectivity curve hinted at a surface that was far less random than the irregular fractured surface typical of cometary nuclei. This raised the possibility that the surface of Atlas or whatever was causing the light reflection, was far more structured than anything observed in comets before. As scientists continued to investigate Atlas, they found that this smooth reflectivity didn't just apply to the light coming from the nucleus, it applied to the entire object. The more data they gathered, the more it seemed that the nucleus of Atlas was not a rough, irregular body of rock and ice, but something that might be far more organized and symmetrical than a natural object could ever be. This led some researchers to speculate that Atlas was not a typical interstellar comet at all. Instead, it might be something far stranger, an object whose surface, or at least its reflectivity, appeared to be intentionally designed. But this was where things got even more complicated. If Atlas had such a large nucleus, why hadn't it been detected sooner? If it truly was 46 kilometers in diameter, its gravitational influence should have been noticeable from far greater distances. Its coma, which was made up of carbon dioxide and dust, should have been bright enough to be seen by telescopes long before SphereX made its observations. And yet, for months, Atlas had remained silent, invisible to our instruments. This contradiction only deepened the mystery of the object. To add to the confusion, the very nature of the coma itself suggested that Atlas was not just another comet, but something far more unusual. Cometary comas are typically chaotic. They are formed by jets of gas and dust erupting from the surface of the comet, creating an uneven, irregular shell that expands as the comet gets closer to the sun. The jets are often violent, with gas bursting out from cracks in the comet's surface in unpredictable directions. But the coma of Atlas was different. It was smooth, uniform, and almost perfectly spherical. It looked nothing like the irregular, chaotic comas produced by typical comets. This raised the possibility that the coma was not simply a result of natural outgassing, but was being maintained or even controlled in some way. One theory that emerged to explain this was that the coma might be artificially created, or at least influenced by external factors that we don't fully understand. If Atlas's coma were natural, we would expect it to be messy, with jets of gas and dust bursting in all directions. Instead, what we saw was a coma that seemed almost perfectly controlled, as if it were being sustained by some mechanism that we didn't yet understand. This was another clue that suggested Atlas might not be a typical comet. Perhaps it was something engineered, something that had been shaped or altered by forces beyond the natural processes that govern most comets. And this was the crux of the mystery surrounding Atlas. The more astronomers studied it, the more it seemed that the object didn't follow any of the rules that we had come to expect from comets. Its size, its smooth coma, the uniform reflectivity, and the complete absence of water vapor all pointed to something that was far outside the realm of normal cometary behavior. But what was Atlas, if not a comet? Was it a fragment of a larger object, or perhaps a piece of alien technology? The possibility that Atlas was something more than just a comet began to seem more and more plausible. As scientists continued to wrestle with these questions, one thing became clear. Atlas was no ordinary object. It was forcing astronomers to rethink everything they knew about interstellar comets, the behavior of celestial bodies, and the very nature of the universe itself. And as the mystery of Atlas deepened, it raised even more questions that might take years, if not decades, to answer. The answers to these questions might change our understanding of the cosmos forever, and perhaps even alter the way we view our place in the universe. In the end, the mystery of Atlas wasn't just about an unusual comet. It was about pushing the boundaries of what we know and challenging our most fundamental assumptions about the cosmos. The more scientists studied Atlas, the more it seemed that this object didn't just defy explanation. It was demanding a new way of thinking about space, science, and the possibilities of what might exist beyond our understanding. Whether it's a natural anomaly or something far more complex, Atlas has already proven to be one of the most intriguing and puzzling objects ever discovered in our solar system. And as we continue to learn more about it, there's no telling just how far the mystery will go. As the observations of 3I/Atlas continued to unfold, another layer of mystery emerged, one that would only deepen the enigma surrounding this interstellar object. This mystery didn't come from the object itself, but from the actions, or rather, the inactions, of NASA. While major space discoveries are often met with great fanfare, public announcements, and a wealth of media coverage, The case of Atlas was strikingly different. Unlike previous interstellar discoveries, which garnered wide attention within days of detection, the discovery of Atlas was met with an unusual silence. The data on Atlas, collected by the Spherex telescope, was first made available to NASA in early August 2025, and yet there was little to no immediate acknowledgement from the space agency. At the time of its discovery, Atlas should have been a headline-making event. This was, after all, only the third interstellar object humanity had ever observed. The previous two interstellar visitors, Oumuamua in 2017 and Borisov in 2019, had captivated the scientific community and the public alike, sparking discussions, theories, and widespread media coverage. Oumuamua in particular had raised eyebrows because it didn't behave like any known comet, exhibiting behavior that was difficult to explain. Despite the mystery surrounding it, the discovery of Oumuamua was met with immediate press releases, media interviews, and global attention. The same could be said for Borisov, which, while behaving more like a typical comet, still captured the imagination of scientists and the public alike. Yet with Atlas, there was none of that excitement, none of the immediate rush to share the discovery with the world. For weeks after Spherex's first data on Atlas was collected, the information remained buried in the background, almost entirely unnoticed. No press conferences, no media blitz, and no urgent announcement to the public. Instead, it took several weeks for any mention of Atlas to appear, and even then it was hidden within a small, obscure blog update on NASA's website. The tone of this update was calm, almost dismissive, without any of the usual excitement that accompanies groundbreaking discoveries. This silence stood in stark contrast to the usual protocol of NASA and other space agencies, where major discoveries are typically celebrated with enthusiasm and detailed press releases. This unusual delay in sharing information about Atlas immediately raised questions. Why the silence? Was this a standard procedure, or was there something more to it? Some scientists and commentators speculate that NASA was simply being cautious. After all, when dealing with such a strange and unprecedented discovery, it makes sense to double-check the data, verify the results, and ensure that everything was accurate before going public. In the world of science, where mistakes can be costly, it's understandable that NASA might want to take extra precautions before making any public announcements. But this explanation doesn't account for the complete lack of urgency that accompanied the discovery. The silence surrounding Atlas was particularly troubling because the discovery was so extraordinary. An interstellar object, one that was behaving in ways completely contrary to what we know about comets, should have been met with an immediate response. This was a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, an object that defied expectations and could potentially alter our understanding of cometary science and interstellar objects. Yet instead of making headlines, Atlas's discovery was handled with an unusual level of secrecy and restraint. This only deepened the sense that there was more to the story than met the eye. For some, this silence felt reminiscent of the treatment that Oumuamua had received in 2017. When Oumuamua entered the solar system, it did so with an unexpected speed and trajectory, and its behavior was unlike any comet or asteroid ever observed before. It showed no visible tail, no gas jets, and no dust trail, characteristics that would typically define a comet. Instead, it accelerated in a way that couldn't be explained by the normal forces acting on a comet. Some scientists suggested that this acceleration might have been caused by an unseen force, such as radiation pressure from a solar sail, while others speculated that Oumuamua might have been an artificial object. Regardless of the explanation, the object's strange behavior led to widespread speculation, and one of the most talked about theories was that Oumuamua could be a piece of alien technology, a probe sent from another star system. However, this theory was dismissed by most of the scientific community, and the mainstream narrative leaned heavily toward natural explanations. Despite the intrigue surrounding Oumuamua, NASA and other space agencies quickly downplayed any suggestion of extraterrestrial involvement, sticking to more conventional theories such as the idea that Oumuamua might have been a comet or asteroid with unusual characteristics. The mainstream scientific community largely dismissed the possibility of alien technology, but the fact that such a suggestion was even raised shows the extent to which Oumuamua defied expectations. Its behavior was so far outside the norm that some researchers felt compelled to explore all possibilities, even those that seemed extreme. The treatment of Atlas seemed to follow a similar pattern. Like Oumuamua, Atlas was behaving in ways that didn't fit into the established models for comets. Its coma, composed almost entirely of carbon dioxide, was completely different from the water-dominated comas that we normally observe. The object's nucleus appeared far larger than initially expected, and the smooth, symmetrical coma suggested something far more organized than the chaotic outgassing of a typical comet. Despite these bizarre and unprecedented characteristics, NASA's response to Atlas's discovery was notably muted. It took weeks for the public to learn about the object, and when the information was finally released, it was done so quietly, with little fanfare. This pattern of silence surrounding strange and unexplained objects raises some troubling questions. Is NASA withholding information about Atlas because they don't fully understand it? Are they reluctant to share the discovery until they have a more concrete explanation for the object's strange behavior? Or is there a more deliberate reason for the silence, one that goes beyond simple caution? Some conspiracy theorists and fringe scientists have speculated that NASA is deliberately suppressing information about Atlas because they know something the public doesn't. Perhaps, they suggest, NASA has reason to believe that Atlas is not a comet at all, but something far more unusual. Something that could challenge our understanding of the universe and even hint at the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence. This line of thinking has been fueled by the similarities between Atlas and Oumuamua. Both objects exhibit behavior that doesn't fit the established rules for comets, and both were treated with unusual levels of restraint by NASA. Could it be that the space agency is withholding information because they suspect that Atlas might not be a natural object but something artificial? The idea that Atlas could be a piece of alien technology, an object deliberately placed in our solar system, has been suggested by some scientists, though it remains highly controversial. There is no concrete evidence to support this theory, and most scientists continue to believe that Atlas is a natural object. However, the unusual behavior of the object, combined with NASA's muted response, has led some to question whether there is more to the story than we're being told. Whatever the reason for NASA's silence, it is clear that Atlas has become a source of fascination, speculation, and uncertainty. The object's strange behavior has forced scientists to reconsider everything they know about comets, interstellar objects, and the potential for life beyond our solar system. Some believe that Atlas is just another anomaly, an outlier in the natural world that doesn't fit neatly into the existing models. Others, however, suspect that Atlas is something far more significant, something that could change our understanding of the universe and our place in it. And perhaps as we continue to observe this mysterious object, the truth will eventually come to light. Whether Atlas is a comet, an artificial probe, or something entirely unknown, it is clear that this discovery is far from over. The mystery surrounding Atlas is only beginning, and as more data comes in, the questions will only grow deeper. And perhaps, in time, we will learn whether this strange object is simply a natural wonder or a sign that we are not alone in the universe.